Buon fresco is a method of painting that involves directly applying powdered pigments, mixed with water, onto damp lime plaster. As the pigments are absorbed into the plaster, the image becomes an integral part of the surface, meaning that this method, in the right conditions, is extremely long-lasting. Fresco, meaning fresh or cool in Italian, was at its height in the Italian Renaissance. But many earlier examples can be found around the world. The plaster is made from lime putty, a substance derived from heating limestone in a kiln and then soaking it in water. This is mixed with sand, using a coarser grain for the first layer and finer sand for the subsequent layers. Typically, a fresco would be made directly onto the stone walls of a building, but portable panels can also be made using wood, terracotta, or other materials. I make small frescoes on terracotta tiles or marine plywood. When using wood, this should first be covered in hessian, which gives the plaster something to grip to. And the panel is then layered with lime plaster in order to create a false wall that absorbs the watery pigments. The plaster is troweled onto the surface and then scored to give it a key to help the next coat to adhere. But first, this initial layer needs to dry for a few days before subsequent coats are added. The final coat is quite a thin layer of plaster. I sometimes add marble dust into the mix for this final painting layer, which gives the plaster surface a more gleaming white hue. It should be troweled so that it's smooth, although small holes and imperfections in the surface can add to the stone-like effect of the final painting. Most of the powder pigments that I use are from specialist art shops such as Cornelison and Kramer, and there are certain pigments that you can't use in fresco. For instance, some blues will alter when they come into contact with lime. One way to circumvent that is to use certain lime-resistant colours once the plaster has dried, but this method of working is not true fresco, as it requires other binders for the pigment, rather than the chemical reaction that fuses colour to surface in buon fresco. Once the plaster has set just enough, you can begin by painting an outline. You can check if it's ready for painting by pressing a finger to the surface, and if no white trace is picked up, you are ready to paint. Since the fresh plaster dries quickly, anything from 2 to 12 hours depending on the conditions, fresco requires a careful preparation process, making drawings or designs and considering the colour palette. The paint is applied quite thinly, and ideally you don't want to use too many layers, as this can muddy the colours. After a few hours, the plaster will have carbonated, as the lime putty dries in reaction to the air and starts to turn back into limestone. At that point, pigments will no longer bind to the surface, and the day's painting, or giornata, is over. A larger fresco might require several sections, or giornate, which can be freshly plastered each day.